let's move to our action items. Appointment of a committee chair and vice chair. Do we have any volunteers?
Oh, Mark?
Yeah.
How would you like to be chair again?
I'll do it.
All right.
Nobody else wants to do it, and I don't want to steal anyone's thunder.
Move Joe.
I second that motion.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Second, what about vice chair? Do we have any volunteers for that position?
I will volunteer for vice chair.
Okay, Commissioner Schulman.
Move that.
Okay, do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, now you're stuck. All right.
I voted no.
All right, okay.
Let the record show it was 4-1.
Yeah, right. Okay. Henry, we're due for some new supervisory vehicles.
Excuse me, Chair.
Oh, we skipped the first step. How could I
First
do
role is
that?
vice chair.
How could I
Should
do
we
that?
rethink that?
How do you like that? Here I am, the chair, and I missed a big step. Okay, any corrections or additions to the previous minutes?
I'll move that we approve the November 14th meeting minutes.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Bennett. Have a second? Anybody second?
Second.
Okay, Commissioner Schulman. Are there any questions? Do you have a question? Oh, okay. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Sorry about that.
Cold weather.
So let's talk now about supervisor vehicles. Henry?
Good morning. So
Hey, how do we get one of those cool jackets? That's cool.
I can set you up at the company store.
All right, I'm sorry.
It's a board.
Go ahead.
So we have an action item before you to approve the purchase of 8 new police responder hybrids. We use the state of Florida contract. Purchase of these out of our transportation division, which Director Thompson oversees. We have a road supervisory unit, and these are made up of highly skilled individuals who really are out there during all hours of the day, 365 days of the year, maintaining an on-street presence. They assist with bus operations. They respond to any accidents or incidents, and they even do special details. They play an instrumental role when PSTA has evacuation activities, whether it's during a storm or a hurricane or even others. So PSTA purchased those cars, which were 2013 Ford Fusions, about 6 years ago, and they have reached about 150,000 miles. So for the purposes that they're in now, they pretty much met their useful life. Knowing that the next car that we'd like to purchase has to be heavy duty, and that's the construction, that's the components and the electrical systems. We spent a lot of time researching what was available out there in the market, knowing that when we start talking heavy duty cars, we start getting into what are called police rated vehicles. So, but we also like the efficiency of hybrids. They do save a lot of money in fuel and wear and tear on the engine components because the engines just don't idle very much. And luckily, Ford has come out with a version of a police-rated hybrid sedan. It's known as their Responder. The good news about this is that they are completely heavy-duty, police-rated, and the estimated fuel projections are that they are 12 miles per gallon better in fuel economy than even the hybrids we are using now, which results in some significant cost savings. So, again, PSTA, when it purchases vehicles of this type, utilizes the state of Florida, the contract numbers before you, and the dealership that is assigned to this particular contract is Prestige Ford out of Mount Dora. $220,000 is the recommendation for this purchase, and that would be funded through our capital improvement program. So this has been a program project. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Any questions, anyone? Commissioner Schulman?
The original 8 sedans, you said they're going on 6 years. What was the original life expectancy? Do you recall what that was when they were purchased?
So for our application, which is, I believe, 20 to 30,000 miles per year, about 6 years is what you get. So they each have, they're approaching 150,000 miles. If this was, say, our own personal vehicles, 150,000 miles would probably take maybe closer to 10 years to achieve. but just for this application. These vehicles are not going to be retired and disposed of. These vehicles are going to be transferred down to our motor pool division, and they will live out the remainder of their lives and allow us to retire some 2006 vehicles and 2010 vehicles that we still have in service.
Sound like you were talking about retired people.
Speak for yourself, fella.
And the, can I have a follow-up? And the 10 years of service for the new vehicles, that's based on the expected usage that we're currently seeing?
That is based upon them being police duty rated and looking at what other municipal police departments are seeing for age on their vehicles. So
Or and under that police duty rating, they're using it for the 20, 30,000 miles?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, our newest commissioner has a question?
Okay, thank you. And, Henry, how about maintenance? What kind of luck have we had with maintenance on those 8 that we had?
they've been pretty good so far, but normal wear and tear, brakes, suspension, wheel end components. That's what you would see on a non-police rated vehicle. With the police rated vehicles, we should see less of that maintenance simply because everything is built heavy duty. It's meant to last longer. It's meant to be out there all hours of the day. So that's why these vehicles should work well for us.
Commissioner Bennett?
What does the $220,000 represent?
That is the ask for the not to exceed limit of this project.
For the 8 cars.
For the 8 cars.
For 8 vehicles?
Yes. They are
So that's a little less than $30,000 each?
about 27.1 per car.
I guess that's a good price, right? Most hybrid vehicles nowadays cost twice that much.
Well, these are through the state of Florida contract, and I can tell you that if you looked at some of the prices that the state of Florida can get cars for, you wish that you would be able to purchase them on your own. That way, but we can't.
Yeah, it beats my price, that's why I'm questioning.
Okay, anything else? Oh, Commissioner Schulman, one more.
So the vehicles are coming from Prestige Ford in Mount Dora. Is that determined by the state? How did we come up with the vendor
Yes,
there?
in the state of Florida contracts, they have approved dealers that have specifically submitted proposals on behalf of the manufacturer they're representing. So state of Florida pretty much vets all those, and if you were to see it, it's just a huge menu of cars and where to purchase them from. So they're the approved dealer for this.
So for this particular car, that's where we go? Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Nothing here.
You stole one of my questions, but the second question is, what's a Atkinson, excuse me, sorry.
Happy New Year.
What's a Atkinson cycle engine?
That is just the name that Ford has given it. Atkinson what it is it's an inline 4-cylinder engine, and because these are hybrid vehicles, it is mated to a electrical generator.
Okay, so it's not a fire and water or anything like that?
No,
Okay.
it's not like a rotary engine or anything.
Okay, all right, okay. And just to summarize what Commissioner Bennett and Commissioners, sorry guys. Just to summarize what these two fellows were asking, the board fits into the state category for bidding, so that we are getting essentially the same price because we have a bulk purchase through the state program. Is that correct? Okay, so this is the lowest price we could get anyway for this type of vehicle.
PSTA on its own.
Okay, all right, very good. All right, do I hear a motion?
One final
Oh,
question.
go ahead, Commissioner Schulman.
I already said one final question, but that was before. This is coming from the capital improvement program, the budget there, so it's already been budgeted for that dollar amount. Was it 220 that was budgeted, or 250, 210, 200, 1 million?
It's about 228 is what it said.
Okay, so we're a little bit under that.
A little bit.
Okay, thank you. I move approval.
Still looking for
Do I have a second?
A second.
Vince, Con seconds?
Should our, Joe, should our motion include, not to exceed?
Yeah, so I'll read the recommendation. So the recommend approval to purchase 8 2019 responders from Prestige Ford utilizing the state of Florida contract at a total not to exceed $220,000.
Very good, thank you.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Well, any negative? No? Okay, passes unanimously. Thank you, Commissioner Bennett, for your clarification on that. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay.
That should go on the consent agenda?
Yes.
Yes. Remanufactured parts. Al, how are you?
Great.
By the way, you did a great job running that meeting the other day. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I really appreciate that. This morning, I bring before you an action item for remanufactured air compressors, fuel pumps, miscellaneous engine components, turbos, and actuators. Approve a one-year contract with 4 one-year options with Kurtz Automotive Incorporated in amount not to exceed $190,000. Southeast Power Systems of Tampa Incorporated in an amount not to exceed $130,000. And D&W Diesel Incorporated in an amount not to exceed $480,000. And authorize the CEO to exercise the 4 one-year options. A little bit of background. Previously, we had a contract with Cummins and Southeast Power Systems of Tampa to provide remanufactured air compressors, fuel pumps, and miscellaneous parts. This procurement right here is the first step in a much larger procurement that will be coming maybe in another year or so. So this is kind of a pilot. When I first hired on here at PSTA, Debbie Lee has charged me, gave me a goal of putting all the parts in Henry's warehouse under contract, or majority of them under contract. And the thought is that we'll get more economies of scale if we do that, streamline the process without Henry staff and my staff having to do our traditional stock reorder report where it's very cumbersome and short. So this procurement right here was very successful. In September of this year, we issued an IFB, and it was issued in compliance with all of our procurement policies. Prior to us releasing it in September, we had 2 failed attempts at putting this under contract. Vendors didn't bid, they didn't understand what we were trying to do. And I just want to give a shout out to my staff, specifically Sharon Spellman, who actually worked the phones repeatedly, and called numerous vendors. I think she called over 35 vendors to find out why you didn't bid and see how we could tweak the solicitation where we could garner competition. The solicitation was downloaded by 15 potential vendors. On October 22nd, we received 5 proposals from Rush Truck Centers of Rush Truck, Kurtz Automotive, Southeast Power Systems, Neopart Transit, and D&W Diesel. Rush Truck, however, was deemed non-responsive because they only provided pricing for the base year. They did not provide pricing for the optional years. Several parts under the solicitation received only 1 proposal from Neopart. Due to this, we entered into negotiations with Neopart, but their pricing was 50% higher than what we currently pay. So I stopped negotiations and I said, with those parts, we'll just continue to procure our traditional way of ordering them on a weekly basis. By unbundling the solicitation, and when I say unbundling, instead of having all the parts go to, for example, Cummins, we unbundled it and we allowed other vendors or other contractors to be able to pick and choose or cherry pick which parts, and in turn, which parts offered us the more favorable pricing. With that, we a savings of approximately 30% for the life of the contract, or a value of $60,000 savings. That $60,000 savings is over the 5 years. Below that, in your package, you'll see the actual table of what each manufacturer or each parts provider is going to be awarded a contract the amount of. And we've done our typical responsibility check, and now all of them are in good standing. This is in our PSTA's operating budget. And once again, the recommendation is approve a 1-year contract with 4 one-year options with Kurtz Automotive in an amount not to exceed $190,000, Southeast Power Systems of Tampa in an amount not to exceed $130,000. D&W Diesel Incorporated in an amount not to exceed $480,000, and authorize the CEO to exercise the four one-year options. So that means that Brad, we won't have to bring this back to the board. That language allows Brad to exercise the options if it's in our favor. If there's any questions, I'll be more than happy.
Okay, questions? Surprised. Commissioner Schulman has a question.
There's still gonna be parts that we receive that are not under contract.
Yes, sir.
Through the normal procurement process you're using currently. Do we lose any sort of economy of scale or breakpoints? You know, in that we're not gonna be doing the same level of business with a particular vendor that we might be getting now?
I don't believe so, because even though we do it our traditional way, we still there is like a mini competition when we send out our stock, what's called our SRR or stock reorder report. That goes out to maybe about 50 vendors, and they all know, and they do public records requests, ask us, hey, who won on this one. So each time they're sharpening their pencils on a weekly basis.
Okay, so we're not going to the same vendor with that list. It's going back out to the marketplace with that out of order.
Yeah, it goes out to full market.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Al, this is a two-part question, and probably Henry has part of the answer on this too. With the existing plan that we have now, have we had out-of-stocks or delays or any other kinds of inconsistent performance among vendors that has caused us to maybe keep a bus out of commission or something like that?
I like to answer that question. Sure. One of the things that I'm very, very passionate about is I consider Henry as my customer, or maintenance as our customer. Mm-hmm. And there's nothing more important to the procurement department than to keep the buses going. I tell my staff that. I said, all the other stuff that we're doing is great, but at the end of the day, getting the bus on the road and being able to pick up the person to get them from A to B is the most important thing. We built a great relationship with his group. If they call us, we react. And the bottom line to your question is the vendors are being responsible and they are providing the parts in a timely manner.
Okay, and these groups, you said we checked them out. Are they prior vendors? Are they any of these new vendors? No, they're all existing?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so we're not hopefully going to have situations where we're out of a key part or something like that is going to cause us delays or out of commission vehicles or anything like that with this arrangement?
No, I got to hand it to Al's staff. He keeps after the vendors, keeps lead times low, and if there's $1 to be saved, he'll return it too.
All right. Okay. Yes, Debbie. I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand up
Oh,
before.
no, I just took it up. But I just want to say thank you to Al and the group and also to Henry, because this is a pilot project and it's saving about 7% over what we were spending. So we started small and we'll continue to grow this. So those kinds of savings are really important as they start accumulating when we start looking at more and doing more and more. Not only do we have dollar savings, but we have productivity savings. When you don't have Al's staff going out for quotes for all these parts continuously every single week. So with that productivity savings, we can do more value added, and we're getting more and more procurements that we're doing and spending a lot more time doing them, so we'll have more value added with the staff.
Okay, thank you. All right, any other questions? Oh, Commissioner Bennett.
No, I was just gonna make a motion.
Oh, okay, all right, go ahead.
I'll move that we purchase the remanufactured parts as specified in the action item.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Thank you very much, Al, for your work. Thank you, Henry, for all your technical input on this. I appreciate it. And we'll keep those wheels turning.
Yes, sir.
Right? All right. So next, Diane, we're going to make a settlement.
We're gonna try.
Okay.
Good morning, Diane Randall, Director of Risk Management. I'm here this morning to request approval for settlement authority in the amount of $40,000 to settle the case with Terry Cluxton. This case is in litigation and happened on November 23rd, 2015 as a result of a hard stop. The injuries to Mr. Costin include neck, low back, and his medical bills are approximately $16,500, but he does continue to treat. We're requesting the settlement authority of $40,000 to resolve this claim without further litigation. The defense evaluation that was in your packet has some explanations regarding that. This $40,000 is within the established claim reserve, so we are requesting that the board approve settlement with Mr. Terry Costin.
Okay, questions? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, just so the person, Terry Costin, it was a rider in our bus,
Yes, he was a passenger in the bus.
and he was standing or sitting?
He was sitting, and he did come out of his seat.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
So, I think, Commissioner Eggers, what you're asking, was there any liability on the part of the rider?
Well, just more to our drivers,
Mhm.
keeping an eye on our passengers, are people standing when they should be sitting, that kind of thing. No big deal. I'm sure people are sitting when they can.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, and Diane, just real quickly on this. This is part of what is paid out of our reserves as opposed to our insurance policy, correct?
Correct.
This is below the threshold.
This, yes, our SIR, or self-insured retention on the policy is $100,000.
Right, okay. All right, do I hear a motion?
Move approval?
Second.
Okay,
I'll move,
Okay.
I'll move that we approve the
okay,
settlement.
all right. Thank you very much. And all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, passes unanimously. Thank you very much, Diane.
Thank you.
And all three of those are on the consent, probably?
Yeah, probably. They're all routine.
Consentish.
Yep.
That'll work.
All right. So we have PSTA Innovative Services Contract modifications, insurance modifications.
Right, this is a late-breaking news item, so I included a paper copy in front of you as well of this. But yesterday, I was told by our fine legal counsel, Alan Zimmett, that after last month's board meeting, and the finance committee prior to that, where you approved multi-year contracts with each of the providers, that being Uber and Lyft and United Taxi and Care Ride and Wheelchair Transport and Liberty Wheelchair, for our innovative programs like Direct Connect and TD Late Shift. We took a look at some of the insurance provisions in some of those vendors' contracts, and those vendors asked us to make changes to the insurance levels in those contracts that the board approved. So Diane has done a review of and worked with the vendors, specifically United Taxi, Wheelchair Transport, and Liberty Wheelchair, and has agreed and done a risk assessment and essentially changed the insurance levels for those providers to what is shown there on the page, to 125, 250, and 50 for the taxi, which is, I guess, the standard in Florida for taxi, standard levels of insurance for taxis in Florida, and then for wheelchair transport and Liberty Wheelchair, a $500,000 per accident liability. And Alan yesterday thought that was material enough to take back to the PSTA board for those
Okay.
contracts.
What was it? What were these coverages before?
We had in all of our contracts a $1 million requirement.
Yeah, that's always, these seem kind of low. That's why I was curious.
They're lower. I mean, Diane can speak more. United, the state of Florida has a sort of standard for taxis, sedan type services that is this this level. In our DART contract for our paratransit that CareRide has the contract right now with. It is $1 million. But we've done a lot of research and a lot of discussions with others, and we feel comfortable with the 500,000 for relatively low numbers of trips on these other programs. Uber and Lyft, as you know, or you probably have read, have a kind of a different kind of insurance. They do carry $1 million in coverage, but it's only when the app, when the Uber ride is being provided. They're not insuring the citizens that are driving for Uber when they're not carrying, when the app isn't on. So it's less costly per vehicle for Uber and Lyft to get that kind of insurance on an as-needed basis than it is for these wheelchair companies to get it, 24/7 kind of coverage.
I would have a question.
Go ahead.
And it would stand to reason that because the wheelchair transportation itself is a little more risky than somebody just sitting in the vehicle, because you're strapping down 4 wheels and any number of things can happen. But when we go to the 125K per person and then the 250, let's say something very tragic happens, and then would we, be liable after those?
We are named as an additional insured on their policy, so their policy would respond to the accident. And just to give you a little background, the state of Florida does have statutory requirements regarding taxi cabs, and these are the minimums. However, the market does not support, the insurance market does not support anything higher at a reasonable cost. The insurance requirements for United Taxi would have more than doubled. It would have gone from $6,000 per vehicle to over $15,000 per vehicle to provide $1 million. And when you're talking the number of vehicles they have in relation to what the vehicles they use for our program, it was not a business decision that could be supported. So in order to do business with them, we did have to make concessions. This is something that many agencies make the same concession, because I did also check with our broker to make sure there wasn't a market somewhere that we weren't being told about. She did some research. She's with Public Risk Insurance Agency, which is part of Brown & Brown. So she made calls across the nation, and this is for taxi cabs. This is the standard, and the market just doesn't support higher limits.
I understand. And then are there other public transit agencies like PSTA that utilize this as a standard?
Hart had the same kind of agreement using United.
Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Eggers?
Yeah, what is our experience over, say, in the last year or two with those providers? Any number of accidents we've been having with them?
They don't generally report them to us, so I don't have any history with them. But they're based on the fact that their insurance carrier, they're kind of at the common level for the premium. I would say that they're like a standard. I don't know how many accidents they have every year.
Commissioner Schulman?
Do we have a sense of to what, whether it's in Pinellas County or across the state of Florida, about what a liability may be in an accident for a taxi cab? Is there any sense that, an average accident costs $100,000 in injuries? I mean, obviously there can be highs and lows, but.
Yeah. We do with the buses, but with private passenger vehicles, I'd have to do some research on it, but I can certainly get that for you.
It'd be interesting if our broker has that information,
She-
as far
she
as what those
probably
liabilities
has.
generally are,
Yes,
so we
yes.
can see how much we're on the hook for after that. Also, United Taxi, are they gonna be providing wheelchair transport, or is that just wheelchair transport and Liberty Wheelchair?
It's just, United Taxi doesn't have any
Okay, so United Taxi is really just a passenger vehicle.
sedan.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's also in line with what you would expect a normal citizen to have as far as insurance coverage on a sedan. So that makes sense.
Well, the minimum limits for an individual is only 1020.
I know.
Yeah.
So I'm not talking about minimum. I'm talking about what you would expect to see a
Right.
prudent, normal, average person to have on their vehicle of the same type, carrying the same passenger load. The $500,000 of coverage for the wheelchair transport, that's a all-encompassing per accident single number?
Yes, that's property damage and bodily injury.
Okay. Thank
Okay,
you.
Commissioner Eggers?
Yeah, maybe doesn't it make sense that, since we keep a real close track of our drivers and their driving performance and accidents, that we should know these, quote, subcontractors for our residents, how they're performing in terms of accidents in our county? I mean, shouldn't, I'm just, it's kind of a question, not really being
Right.
facetious about it. Doesn't that make some sense to?
Well, I mean, we're working, I'm gonna start saying some things that Brad jump in if you agree or disagree. The agreement with these folks is on like a reimbursement basis, so I can't tell them who to hire or what to do.
No, that's not what I'm suggesting.
So, I mean, but what I'm telling you, these are new programs, and we've never been involved in this type of situation before. And I will go to our broker and get some information.
Okay.
And, I mean, we can certainly ask them for the information. I don't know that there's any obligation for them to provide that information.
Well, to the extent that we find anything
Contract
alarming
with them.
I mean.
Right, I mean, but I'm just saying that is when you start asking people for their, I mean, I'm squirrely about it when people start asking me for our claim history. I'm like, why do you want that? What do you know, so it's not something that people generally just say, oh, here, let me show you this.
Yeah, but they are under our umbrella in this case. This is a little bit different. But
I agree with Commissioner Eggers.
if you can get some of that information, it'd
Yes,
be
I
nice
could
to start
certainly ask.
tracking it and see how how many accidents they're actually getting into in our county.
Yeah.
Everybody happy? I have a couple questions, Diane. One is, we're talking about wheelchair and Liberty Wheelchair, wheelchair transport and Liberty Wheelchair. We're not talking about Care Ride also? I mean, they do wheelchair
No.
transport as well.
Care Ride is not part of this program.
So they have higher limits,
We work with Care Ride on the paratransit side.
right?
Through our DART program.
Right?
So they do have higher limits. That was, when we did the procurement, those were the limits, and that was they were able to get that. They are part of Baycare, so they have that.
Mhm.
For wheelchair transport and Liberty, this is a new arrangement with them, and I can tell you, when we did the procurement for the paratransit, wheelchair transport was very vocal about their dislike of our insurance limits.
Mhm.
So, they were not part of the final numbers.
Sure, Chair.
Yeah, I'm just concerned that wheelchair transport from Care Ride, that they're gonna want to drop their limits as well, because we're on the hook for anything over and above this, correct?
Not necessarily, because we are additional insureds on all of them, and our contracts specifically state if they settle a claim within that insurance policy limit, then no.
Right, I'm not asking about if they settle within their limits, I'm asking if they don't settle
I mean-
within their limits, then we're on the hook for higher limits.
Well, they can certainly sue us, and we would, of course, go back to the contract and make it responsible to them. But I can't with 100% certainty sit here and tell you, no, we wouldn't have to pay anything out.
Yeah, And Alan feels comfortable with these limits?
He does.
These-
So-
These are really low, for public transit type situations.
So, again, this is different. These are setting, this is cutting edge stuff here. There's not anyone that's really as far as advanced as we are. These different programs are, some of them, first in the United States to have done this. But they are different than anything else we do. We have a risk management department led by Diane that oversees much higher insurance, as you know, for our buses.
Right.
For the buses.
Right.
And for our main paratransit program called DART. That is 1,000 trips a day, every day, provided by CareRide.
Mhm.
That has $1 million in coverage. And as Vince knows, as a former employee of them, a large portion of CareRide's whole operation is related to providing the DART service. Not so much these companies related to these other programs. United Taxi has, what did their thing say, Diane? 160 cabs or something like that?
Yes.
And they provide, for us, 100, maybe 100 trips a day. I don't even know if it's that many. Uber doesn't even know how many vehicles they have. Wheelchair Transport and Liberty have provided 5 trips over the last year for people with disabilities that who want to try to take advantage of these programs. They really, it's very, very small. And so, as Diane said, it's just it's a different relationship. We have a contract with them, but we're basically, it's just like hailing a cab. We're calling up the cab, or through the different apps and things that we do, and paying the regular rates. They have an accident, I mean, they're under no obligation to tell us. Now, we are in the midst of a whole legislative process where we're trying to get the feds to count these rides as towards our various funding formulas, and I would imagine that as we move down that road, then we're gonna have to get that kind of information from them. It's gonna have to sort of morph over time into more like the care ride relationship, where these are, true providers of this. On the wheelchair accessible vehicle front, we've really struggled. What we're trying to do is provide, real-time accessibility for our services for people with disabilities, so that they don't have to call the day before like they do CareRide. But there's just not that many wheelchair accessible vehicles in Pinellas County, we're finding out. The 2 big companies are CareRide and Wheelchair Transport. They're the only companies that exist that have more than 10 accessible vehicles. Liberty Wheelchair has 1 vehicle. And if you guys know anybody that owns a wheelchair accessible vehicle, we'll start negotiating with them. We need to try to find more, and these companies don't have, they have the 500. I don't think we're going to be carrying many trips in the foreseeable future. If this does, explode into something like DART or something, certainly we're going to have to look at. We're going to have to constantly monitor what our risk is with these services.
Go ahead, John.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, go ahead.
And I appreciate actually your last comment, monitoring what our risk is. I think we're talking about levels here of insurance without looking at what the actual claim history looks like for these sorts of things. So
Yes.
if we have a $500,000 policy or $1 million policy, but the average claim is $110,000, then we as an organization are technically overpaying, or these carriers are overpaying for insurance for a risk they don't really have. So for me, it's important to kind of get those actual risk numbers. Well, what is our liability?
We did look at that for wheelchair. We didn't look at, as Diane said, we haven't really looked at it for the cabs.
I would imagine
but
for
we
the cabs,
looked at it
this
for the
is-
wheelchairs.
I would imagine for the cabs, this is pretty much going to cover most injuries, accidents, at fault sort of situations, just based on personal experience. What I would also wonder though is, I realize this is a new program that we're running. Is there a possibility for us as an organization to have some sort of, I don't want to say umbrella, but an umbrella-esque policy that we can have to cover our liability above their limits.
We have-
Since,
that's-
no, but I mean, like going down to 125, as opposed to self-insuring, which is what I thought you said.
Well, we have the sovereign immunity limits of 200,000, 300,000. We have a self-insured retention of 100,000. So the first 100,000 of any accident we have is PSTA's money.
Okay, so what we're talking, so if we have a $125,000 bodily injury limit under these new, you're saying, their insurance policy would pick up 125, we would then pick up the next 100 out of our retention?
Not willingly, but.
No, I'm just saying, no, I'm just saying if everything was, if everything was actually deemed
No,
to be.
the whole value of the claim, I would argue, and I'll have to confirm this with our broker, the value of the claim, if it goes over 125,000, my argument to our insurance carrier is gonna be that 100,000 has already been paid, so it's our excess carrier's responsibility to pick up that additional over the 125. Now, whether or not that would be successful, but that would certainly be my argument to them, that the value of the claim has exceeded our $100,000 SIR. Even though it was paid by somebody else, it's still the same claim, so that this is simply excess over that. That would be my argument to them.
So with the insurance levels that we currently have,
We have-
what would be the maximum claim under those levels?
Sovereign immunity maximum is 300,000 per accident,
Mhm.
200,000 per person.
Okay, so what you're saying, and I'm just trying to understand where the
Right, I
liability
understand,
is.
but-
So if it's a $300,000 maximum claim, you're saying 125 is coming from, like in this case, United Taxi's insurance, then 100,000 is coming from our reserves for those, and then 75 would come from an actual insurance policy that we have.
I would take the position that there would be a total of $300,000 worth of insurance, if you include us. And the first 125 would be paid by the taxi cab company's policy, and then I would go straight to our carrier and say,
So you would say the
Okay.
100,000 we retained was covered by that 125?
right, that is
from the
what
policy.
that would be my
So-
argument to them. So if it was a 200,000, we would ask them to pay 75,000.
Okay, so in essence, we're still, if that argument prevails, then we're still, we're covered up to a $300,000 limit, which is the maximum.
And we
limit anyway.
actually have, over and above the sovereign immunity limit, we do have excess insurance up to $2 million, but it would take a act of Congress, quite literally, to exceed the 300,000.
Okay.
One-
Commissioner Cox?
One quick question for Mr. Miller. So you say there's roughly 5 trips, is that a month or a year, or wheelchair trips on these programs?
So far, it's pretty low.
Yeah, it's definitely low. We expect it to grow in the next couple months, but nothing crazy, maybe 20 trips a day.
Understand.
Nothing like what we're
I totally
doing.
understand. And what is the reimbursement to the wheelchair provider for that, the rate?
Right now, we're paying the DART rate
Okay.
for wheelchair
All right.
trips.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Before I ask for motion, does everybody feel comfortable with this situation? With this situation? All right. Okay, do I hear a motion?
Okay. I'll move to approve, as recommended by staff. 125K for the taxi services, 250, and then, well, as written here, I'll just move to approve it as written.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Commissioner Bennett, thank you. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
I vote no on this.
Yeah, I vote no as well.
I don't feel comfortable with this.
So you're uncomfortable about the
limits are
lower
too low.
amount?
The limits are too low. And I just don't feel comfortable. I mean, other than, I've been in the insurance business for 42 years, and these kind of limits on a carrier are much too low. And we're too vulnerable as a backup to these small companies, which could place us in a difficult slot. I'd really like to know more information before I feel comfortable with this.
What would you like to know so I can?
I'd like to know that we aren't on the hook for, a large claim when these limits are so low by the vendors. So is this in a hurry? Do we have to get this out right away? Because, if we can delay this a month and get more information, is that going to follow this up?
Well, Mr. Chairman, the motion passed 3-2, so
Yeah,
we're not
okay.
going to delay it.
Okay.
It's passed.
Okay, thank you. You're right. I apologize for asking questions after the fact.
As a insurance professional, we would happily give you the telephone numbers of the CEOs of these companies, and you could provide them maybe a more competitive quote for higher insurance. They would love it.
Okay, thank you.
Or we would love it.
Okay. All right, as long as I'm on the books, that's
Yeah,
okay.
question about whether this goes to the board or consent. My sense is probably
Because
should go to the board.
because it's split, I'd say, let's say.
It's got to be discussed, yeah. I concur. Okay. Any other items on the action items agenda that we want to add at the last minute?
Nothing else.
All right, then we'll move forward with our regular reports. Debbie, monthly financial report?
Thank you, Chair. We are reviewing the month of November, and in the month of November, we had a favorable month. We were about $3.3 million favorable budget variance. But the main reason for that is the timing of the property tax revenue, which was a little over $3 million positive variance to budget. On the expense side, we were under budget by $159,000 in just about every category. So that's good news there. The only thing is when we talk about on the next page on a year-to-date basis, you can see we're $2.9 million favorable to budget, taking out that $3 million timing difference on property tax revenue. We are on target to budget. Now, one might think that's a good thing, but when we're facing a $1.8 million deficit in this year's annual budget, in my estimation, that is not a good thing. We have to continue to find many ways to save money, and this is an issue that as a management team, we're looking at very, very carefully. So we are looking at a lot of different areas, not only on the procurement side, but our biggest expense is on our personnel side at about $48 million of our costs on an annual basis relate to salary and fringes. So we are continuing to find ways of doing things better. What I found is October was over budget on some of the salary lines. November was improving. I've got early numbers for December. We're improving again. So we're moving in the right direction, but we have to continue to even do better to be able to reduce that deficit in this year's budget. So you'll be probably hear us touting any savings that we have and working very hard on the concerns that we have related to this year's budget.
Thank you. Any questions?
Yeah, I think it'd be nice to hear every month how we're doing towards that 1 point, did you say 1.7?
Right, and this year so far we've really, since we're
We
on
counted
target-
20 this morning.
Mhm.
Brad and I were saying,
Yeah.
8 on this and 12 on this, we've saved 20,000, so.
And Diane saved about $2,500 last week on something where we actually got cash back, so all the little things will add up.
But if you, maybe each month you can
Yeah.
give us how we're doing.
That would
Do
be
it like
great.
a United Way thermometer.
Yes.
Whatever, I think that would be a nice visual, but
Yeah.
Quick
especially
question.
if you make it. If you don't, it's.
Okay, Commissioner Schultz?
And this is really just an operational question. So the timing of the tax revenue, what causes the tax revenue timing to be off?
Just when we get the checks, maybe Michael can answer that from.
I mean, so my notion would have been that these things show up on when they're scheduled to show up, and that's not the case.
I think statutorily, they have to send those amounts to us a certain number of times a month for the first few months. And we try to base the budget allocations based on past 2 or 3 years' history. And just this year, they distributed those funds to us earlier. Or potentially property taxpayers are paying their taxes earlier to take advantage of the 3%.
Okay. Okay, just was wondering why, I would expect it to be more like it's due on the 15th sort of timing.
Say the last part again, please.
Well, if you pay your taxes in November, I believe, you save 3%. So.
Right, so the state has all the money sitting in the bank someplace, and so Commissioner Schulman's question is, why don't we just get 1/12 each month?
They distribute it as they receive it, the tax collector.
So they're not benefiting by it.
Yeah. They do pay us some interest on it, but it's very small, but they do distribute it as they receive it.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, go ahead, Commissioner Cox.
Yes, I noticed on the TD, the purchase transportation, it seems like it's way down. Yeah, for like December, it was 51.1% less. Are we funded less for TD now, or is that, how do we get funded for TD?
No, we're not funded less for that, but I think we're making sure that the folks who are using the program are qualified in the program and that they're going on the TD late shift between home and work. There's a lot more scrutiny on that.
And then the DART has increased like 5.5% too. Is that correct? Am I correct?
I'm sorry, the what?
DART.
Oh, DART?
DART client trip.
Yes.
DART expenses, I should say.
Yes.
Well, I'm looking at the.
Which one are you looking
Over here.
October.
Was that October?
No, wait.
Oh, from the previous year? Yeah.
And that could be due to.
Growing, I mean, the DART growth is due to growing ridership on DART.
Right, I understand. Well, but why, I mean, there's quite a growth in ridership too on DART.
We're at record highs.
And is there a reason? I mean.
We are taking a great look at that.
Well, are we scrutinizing the applicants and so on and so forth?
Right, we are looking at our whole process toward the application process about approving additional folks, or whether or not there's any changes we can make to make sure that our application process is compliant but careful. And then we're looking at ways in which we might incentivize folks to take the regular bus instead of a $30 care ride ride. And then we're also looking at ways in which we might actually just have to reduce the number of the coverage area of DART, which would reduce the number of trips in order to manage it. We think some of the reasons that we've been told is because other programs, either the VA or Medicaid or even Medicare, might be sort of sloughing off trips that they formerly paid to DART, which is much cheaper for them.
Yeah, the VA would rather pay $450 than have to pay their vendor, whatever they pay their vendor, to take people there. And likewise with Medicaid, from what I went to a few dialysis units, we were large users of transportation because of the end-stage renal disease. And they said the Medicaid transportation is not, it's actually horrible. People don't get to the dialysis, they get there late, so on and so forth. So it could be that these clients are paying for a ride instead of what they should be entitled to by their Medicaid insurance. So anyway, yeah. So
that's what we're trying to find solutions of, and that's what Mr. Bennett and our efforts in Tallahassee are going to be focused on. Seeing if we can do anything about that.
Well, I went in front of the Pinellas Legislative Delegation last month, and as a citizen, explained this to him very briefly in 3 minutes, and that was that. And, well, I think it's a concern. I think it's a concern that the people in this community that are really the least of us are not getting what they are entitled to. And I think it's probably due to state funding and so on and so forth. So that's my 2 cents.
We're trying to really ratchet up our data analysis capabilities on DART especially. We now, being respectful, that these folks really need the service, but now we have a top 10 list, top 10 biggest users of DART, and like you said, they are dialysis every single day users. Tracking what users might be able to transfer to using the bus, even for some of their trips, can save us money.
Yeah, in the county, there's 1,500 dialysis patients, and the majority of them need rides. They have site, issues, so many issues.
And we're in the process of, I think just to piggyback off that, we're in the process of looking for alternative funding sources or to identify the funding authorities that we are taking on a larger and larger share of this particular component of service, and that we need to make sure that we're getting compensated for it, because it's really dinging our budget.
Yeah. I mean, we're focused on the expenses and lowering those, as we've been talking about mostly, but, and certainly also the revenues.
The alternative is we'll do the rides if we have the money, but we're not right now getting the money from the regular sources. So that's the issue. It's a disintermediation situation.
Technically, per the Americans with Disabilities Act, we are not permitted to deny rides.
I understand that.
Even based on funding.
Yeah.
We have to provide the ride if the person has been qualified.
Right.
That's where we're looking at the qualification process.
Right. Thank you. All right, thanks. I appreciate that, Debbie.
Thank you, Debbie.
Okay, PSTA contracts, Debbie.
Well, this ties right into our number 1 contract is Care Ride.
Right.
And a matter of fact, in this year's budget for our DART program, we have about $8.6 million budgeted. One of the items, just to piggyback on our conversation, each year I have our auditors take a look at some aspect of our organization above and beyond the regular audit, and this year is DART that they're looking at to come up with some suggestions on how to improve our own processes. As Brad mentioned, within the authority, the things that we can control, that'll hopefully garner some savings or process improvements. So we've got the contracts listed here in the order of the highest to lowest that we have out there. Jolly Trolley is our next one. And fuel, which is usually a topic of discussion. We are within budget so far, and fuel prices have been going down. We're locked in about 2/3 of our budget, with the remainder floating to the marketplace. So that's helping us to save some money. So far, year to date, it's about $45,000 that we've saved to budget. So you can take a look at this at your leisure if you have any questions. But again, we have to keep our eye on things that cost us a lot of money.
Right. Commissioner Schulman?
Just a request, is it possible to have a current year contract amount so we can see what because we have contracts that span different timeframes in this spreadsheet or in this table? It'd be helpful to see what is the current year expectation for each one of those contracts versus us having to do quick math and scroll down the sheet.
I will see. I know we put it in our system as the full 5-year.
Okay.
I'll have to look to see if we have it in a 1-year basis.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Questions?
Chair, we're about to have a tornado drill, but I'm told we're supposed to ignore it.
Okay, I mean, that's good to know. Okay. If it were, we're gonna have a tornado, but it doesn't work, that would be a different issue.
At least we're warm.
Yeah. I have a question on our bus buy consortium with Lynx. My understanding is they're running mostly diesel still, right? When we buy buses in a consortium with Lynx, are we buying the same kind of buses they're buying?
The consortium is like a menu.
Yeah.
They offer CNG, diesel,
Okay.
hybrid,
Okay.
all kinds.
Okay.
Not all electric yet, but
Okay. Thank you. All right, any other questions? All right, thank you, Debbie. Keep us up to date.
Will do.
Thank you. And ridership performance, Brad.
So this, in January is the one time a year you get two ridership reports. November ridership was actually up, which was a positive. And December was fairly flat, but slightly down, largely due to, we think, weather. Well, I know weather is the #1 factor in what ridership does on a single day. We had a pretty rainy December compared to last year. We're tracking this, of course, tracking it compared to fare box revenue. Our fare box revenue is holding about even with where it was last year, which is a good sign, and hopefully that will continue. Glad to any questions.
Yeah, questions? How are we stacking up against the, our not our competitors, but our fellow members of our bus group? Are we, nationally, is ridership following similar trends, or are we a
Yes.
little bit of an anomaly?
Every single one of the members of the American Bus Benchmarking Group, which we compare ourselves most specifically to, ridership on their bus systems are down. More significantly than ours has dropped. But there are a handful of cities out there that are not in the benchmarking group that have seen ridership increases. Yeah, so, I mean, we're tracking all that as best we can.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Well, we're running a little ahead, so that's good. Any special topics that we will be planning on in the future?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I'm interested in some kind of discussion with regard to the passenger complaint that we received about passengers drinking, smoking, swearing, taking drugs on the bus, and she said that she witnessed this over the several times. We got an email with respect to that.
Went to you directly or went to the company?
Well, I got one, so I'm sure we all did.
I remember seeing that. I forwarded it to our
Board member?
the transportation department
Yeah, I'd
to
just like to
investigate.
make
So
sure we hear.
We'll get you a response.
Hear a response on that.
Okay.
so.
Yeah.
And it doesn't
We
have to
just
be at our
received that
meeting,
yesterday.
it probably
Yeah.
should be at the regular meeting.
Already started to look into that. So we just received it yesterday.
So what we will investigate it and get you a response. I don't know if that went to the whole board or.
Well, it shouldn't have just came to
Okay.
me.
It just came to us yesterday.
Came to the whole board.
Me neither. I don't recall seeing it, but maybe I didn't.
I don't look at my
realize.
spam.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Anything else that we need to discuss? Okay, thank you, everyone. This meeting's adjourned. Great job to all our reporters. Great job to the people doing contracts. Thank you.
Thanks.
Let everybody know what's going on.
You're so good, you got me.
Just
Like a bull.
With a raise.
Yeah, I got a raise. More headaches. I got a raise. Worked out.